what do you think of like now that you've been doing mastering, right? Like analog, I know you have analog, right?
Right.
Like still digital. How much of a difference does it make when your sound?
I think so I started summing, doing analog summing about probably a year and a half ago. And so what I do is I sum everything through analog to give it the analog warmth, because it's a room that you can't create with any plugin. I mean, I trust the people that I have that mentor me, that it's a big difference. It also helps when your production is tight. It's going to help create a new space and a new sound for your production. Analog is definitely a lot more expensive,
Yeah.
but the difference is from summing something through a lunchbox and then comparing it to summing it through a third-party plugin it's night and day. Like,
Yeah.
you have your lunchbox. What do you think?
Well, it's for sure a game changer. So I have that like little labs right there, the voice of God, and just like the warmth of bass lines through that is night and day. I mean, I did a review on my channel between like the UAD plugin and the actual like 500 series uh, thing, but it was just like you can like I don't know, like I could like feel like the hairs in my ears like kind of like
Right.
tingling. So
Right.
it's just a little bit different of a feeling, and I don't know if I was like just like mind blown because it was analog, right? But I did feel a lot of like difference, and in YouTube when you do a comparison like that, it doesn't really translate as well because YouTube has their own like way of like compressing sound.
Right.
So I actually had to add the different files so people could download them and actually have a listen by the like in their rooms or in their headphones, so they could like actually like figure out if it was like good or not, if it was like true or not what I was saying, right? So whenever like there's something like that comparison in YouTube, that is something that you have to keep in mind because
I agree. I think, but there's a lot of people that are going to nitpick that. Okay, so for instance, if we solo something like a kick drum, or like let's say it's a drum pattern with bongos or congas, and we solo that, and we sit there and just listen to it. After we start going through and experimenting and listening to it, it's never gonna. You're gonna forget what the original sounds like to begin with. So the easy thing is once you sum it, it creates a room. Yeah. Which you can't recreate through any plugin, and that's the thing that I don't think a lot of the newer producers or the younger generation of producers understand is what analog actually does.
Yeah,
it is its own room. It's its own plugin that you can't buy. It's analog.
Well, the other thing for me is I think it's they have its own coloring, so it's completely different. The one thing that I've been understanding, especially since I'm moving away from like working with like my computer as much, and everything is more like machines and like synthesizers and all that stuff, is that you cannot recreate a sound. So you better record it. Right. Like it's not like, I feel like when you're working in a computer, you have your automation and all this other stuff, but I feel like you don't expose yourself to mistakes compared to like, okay, like I'm writing like drum patterns in like my rhythm, and then all of a sudden I hit a button and it turns out that this sound just makes the track, right? But if I work solely in the computer, I'm not able to do that because everything is so controlled.
Right.
So for me, I find the same thing with like the 500 series, is that it's like right now, one of my preamps is giving me some like issues. It's kind of like oversaturating things.
Right.
But at the same time, that sound, if you add it to a bass line,
you can't recreate it.
No. Right. Even like if you wanted to do that
sometimes mistakes are the best creations.
Yeah.
For sure. But so I mean, with studio time and obviously messing around in the studio, I think my time has been limited because I'm so busy with production. And like sound design. I try to spend 1 day a week on just sound design, but I haven't been able to for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So 1 day or 2 days, I just try to go through and recreate new sounds that I could work and then run them through the summing. Any questions?
Yeah, we have a question. This is
Sweet.
like, how long did it take you to make your first track once you started producing?
Okay. And who asked that question?
His name is Sebastián Villatoro.
Okay. Well, thanks for the question. That's a tough one to answer. I think the easiest way to answer that is I could do an original in about, I would say, like 32 hours from start to finish, including mastering. If that's like a rush project, I guess. An original, I would probably say an original is easy 40 hours. So 40 hours from start to finish, like coming up with the idea, getting that idea all the way from the concept, the groove, all the way to the layout, all the way to, the final steps of automation, and then obviously the mix down, and then the mastering, because I do all the mastering and the mix down myself. So I would say probably about 40 hours for an original, and then I would say like 32 hours for a remix.
So going back to that question. So when you first started, like when you knew,
when I first started,
like when did you know that it was enough? I need to like put this out, because if not, I'm never going to do that. I mean, we know a guy who does that, right?
We do.
Yeah.
I know a lot of guys that do that.
Yeah.
So
we're calling you out, Jonas.
That's right. So I think that like when you get to a point where you can't do anything else in the track, and you've reached the point of listening to the track so much that you're almost not liking the track anymore, I think that's the time when you need to finish it and get it out and get it into the universe, let it breathe. Otherwise, it's going to sit there and you're never going to be happy with it. And this is the dilemma that I always talk with producers. People are unhappy. I'm unhappy with some of the music that I've produced and released, but that's because our ears are always changing. Like every 2 weeks, I'm coming up with something new or new sounds that I'm hearing that I think my ears are like actually growing. And when you're starting a track and you think it's done and you're happy with it and you can't go anywhere else, finish it, get it mastered, and start shopping it to labels.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. And if big labels don't, so when you're shopping to these big labels, which we all are doing, because we all want to get on these big labels because their marketing and their followers and their presence is just is next level. When you're shopping to these big labels and they don't get back to you, don't ask for feedback. Just keep going, and because your artwork, your music is all your own painting, and there's going to be critics all the time and people that aren't going to like it, and there's going to be people that love it. And you have to trust yourself, and you have to find this barrier where you could say, okay, I'm happy with this, I'm going to release it, I'm going to shop this track.
So what do you think? I mean, we've been part of the process of like sending stuff to record labels, right?
Yes, for a long time.
For a long time. So like I remember that you had like set goals on like what labels you wanted to be a part of, every probably like 3 years ago you started with that. So once you landed in that big label, how was it for you? What was like the first reaction like? Because you knocked on so many doors on that label.
Oh yeah.
That it was kind of crazy.
So I had, and I know what label they're talking about. So I had tried and been sending release or demos to Toolroom, and that was about I know how long ago it was. It's 5.5 years ago. I started making it a goal that I wanted to get on Toolroom, and I wanted to get on like Suara at that time, and Deep Perfect, and Witty Tunes, of course. But so I started really listening to nothing but Toolroom releases, and really kind of following their sound and trying to regenerate my music to fit into their wheelhouse. And it was not easy, and it took about 3.5, 4 years before they signed my first release, which was ID Check, and it came out on the Ibiza compilation. And that, I mean, it was when I finally got the email back from the A&R at Toolroom saying that we want to sign this and is it available, I was like on cloud 9.
You were like, no.
yeah, no, I was freaking out, and I was just like, I honestly, I mean, it was amazing, and it's still amazing to be a part of such a huge label and huge family, because all the artists on Toolroom, they generally take care of a lot of different artists, and they're very nice and kind, and they're big, and it's awesome to see that. And it was just a really awesome experience and humbling experience. And I knew that, like, it just because of this one track is getting signed to a compilation, like, it's still, I want to get an EP signed to Toolroom. So that's kind of like that's still like one of my goals.